Right. Hello, everybody.
Good morning, you handsome devil.
Well, Kurt, here we are with fresh coffee and a new episode, 2078 by my reckoning.
I think,
Yesterday was 2077.
yeah, but I think I want to break yesterday into 2077 and 2078.
Oh, we called this one 2079.
So we'll do 2079.
But everybody, please hit like and subscribe and notifications and leave a lot of comments too, because they're fun.
How did I manage to finish that coffee that fast?
Oh my.
It happens. It's either that or the elves actually do steal your coffee. It's fun.
I was going to tell a story from Friday.
You were?
Yeah. I got upset because I was notified by the TSA that
you got upset. That doesn't happen.
a little bit.
That
I got
doesn't generally
irritated.
happen.
That would be more like it.
Okay.
The TSA informed me that my trusted traveler signal badge was expired and I needed to redo it. And they told me like 20 days before, and it expired 10 days after they told me, which I didn't notice until way too late. So anyway, I'm like trying to re-up the thing and pay them money. And then it's like they're taking all this personal information from me. And then it occurs to me, it's like this. What they did was they hired a bunch of lower class people to make my life miserable unless I submit to giving them information about myself personally and pay them money for the privilege to avoid it.
Yes.
And I'm like, that is the most obnoxious crap ever. And that's Leninism at its finest.
Yeah, we call this in economics, it's the dog leash phenomenon. Which is that because a small number of people don't train their dogs and discipline their dogs, the rest of us have to leash our dogs, and we have to pay money to register that we've leased, and we're leashing and registering our dogs. So the majority of us pay for it. Why? Because you can police good people.
Yeah,
it's hard to police bad people. When what you want to do, of course, is to amp up the punishment on bad people.
That sounds right.
Good people police them. What instead they do is they empower the state by not letting good people police bad people, limiting the state to policing bad people, and therefore policing good people instead of bad people. Now the law, once you realize that's actually what happens, or that's the unintended consequence of the actual behavior, it's quite interesting. But what we really have is by depriving the good people of the necessity of encouraging or disciplining people into adoption of norms and behavior under norms, they have empowered the state to do it instead, which means they police the good people instead of the bad people. Once you realize that's everywhere. I mean, it's like the other example is moms in minivans getting tickets at 2 miles over the speed limit, while the people who steal cars have to get caught 10 times before they do jail time. So it's just like this. It just all it is a way of making money, right?
It certainly appears to be so.
So
there's a political power play here too, because you hire a large bureaucracy to do something, and then they have a vested interest in its inertia. They create a political inertia.
Of course, and so what you see is any bureaucracy or any employees, it's not just in the public sector, it's in the private sector, they maximize rents. In other words, they maximize extractions from the company to the point where the company no longer can adapt. The same thing happens to governments. They maximize the number of rents in the government till the government is actually it's actually cancerous and can't adapt. And the same thing happens to, of course, civilizations, empires, which is you raise enough people up, right? So there, because of some advantage, but the advantage dissipates, but all the rents are left in place,
Oh,
right? And so you have this problem, and it happens in cultures too. Spain is the most obvious one, where you took a formerly hardworking people, flooded them with new world gold, right? The economy collapsed, but the behavior of people relaxing like their nobility, right, didn't adapt. So the behavior is consistent across all human organizations, which is that people exhaust opportunities, but because of stickiness, which is what the behavior is of people to not adapt to anything where they, in other words, the
but I
cost
want to, yeah,
the cost of discovery of a means of obtaining income is far higher than they are willing to pay the cost of adaptation to a new means. So what happens is everything collapses. It depends on how fast, right? Like we've been collapsing since the 70s,
yeah,
but people see it as collapse when actually it was an increase due to the post-war era, right? In other words, from the 50s to the 70s, we had an artificial increase, but people took that as the new normal instead of an artificial increase. And so we built all this false promise of freedom from previous scarcity, and they created this institutional crap and this belief that we would be able to have the great society and equality and all, also like nonsense, when it was just a temporary windfall of being the product of the only industrial country left standing. And so we're going back. Then, the second thing happened was, of course, is that once the world catches up to industrialization, we no longer have a civilizational advantage. So we went from having a advantage in our civilization, despite the rest of the world was still living in agrarian poverty, to a civilizational advantage while we had been reindustrialized, but the rest of the world was living in poverty, to no civilizational advantage because now the rest of the world's had dropped in industrialization, and we have no means of earning wealth that produces the same kind of multipliers as industrialization did. So I mean, opportunity, right? Will curve opportunity as the curve moves forward, right? You peak the opportunity, you exhaust the opportunity. Well, when people talk about cycle theory, all they're talking about is discovery of opportunities combined with human lifetimes and forgetting curves, right? So we learn things at a certain speed, we forget things at a certain speed, people live certain lifetimes. And so they attribute this to generations. Well, it is true of generations because generations seek to become capable, they seek to build acquire wealth, and they seek to consume, then they seek to acquire wealth, then they seek to dissipate the wealth, and these generations are always playing this game, which ends up in a big graph. So people say, oh, bullshit, the cycle theory. I'm like, it can't be otherwise. It can't be, because even population ups and downs have to do with this same set of variables. So I always think poo-pooers are, I mean, it's like they want behavioral science to play like physical science. It doesn't work like that, right? I mean, behavioral science is far more complicated because you have cohorts, right?
that's right. There's generational differences.
Right. And so you have to, and the cohorts always overlap and they're always interacting. And so it's much more like, different gases interacting than it is like just particles. And so what you get is you get people trying to say, well, math, if that were true, the math would do this. And I'm like, of course it would. You don't understand mathematics. Mathematics is dependent upon the scale independence, except that we have a pattern, but we don't have scale independence because the scale is constantly changing depending on what knowledge is available, what isn't, so the scale is always changing. Does it live within the margins of cohorts within both as generations and within generations? Sure, but it also happens on the stage of development. How many free people are available? I mean, it's not an infinite number of variables, but it isn't waves, these waves, cycles, they're predictable, but they're not timeable. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I say the same thing is that whenever you do engage in any kind of prediction, which I'm going to say you were right in a minute.
Oh,
Yep. I had to prepare the audience.
I have to get the seatbelt on. Thanks.
The problem is that there's a difference between predictable and timeable.
Yes.
Right. And so you can say, well, this curve will exhaust. This opportunity is going to exhaust at some point. But I mean, given the number of variables, we can only say it's going to be, in this 20-year period.
That's right.
And there are points where, because we had some earlier in the last century, where you should have a collapse and you don't. You just have a decrease. So you have an M rather than two A's, right?
Right.
You have so you have these variables that overlap. So, and I always say, I just want to say, you don't really understand math, do you? Right. And then I realized that conversation is way too fucking hard for the moron I'm talking to, or the moron I'm talking to wouldn't have come to the stupid fucking conclusion in the first place. Right. It's just like, we were talking about yesterday. It's goddamn hopeless. So so did I make my point there?
I think so.
My cycles.
I wanted to tie back the premise of stickiness to inertia so that it relates to physics better.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, that's about it.
I see. Yeah. Okay, got it.
It's behavioral inertia is what you're talking about. Okay.
Behavioral inertia exists because of what we call stickiness, which is the cost of seeking a new pathway.
Right.
So we tend to double down on pathways until we have no other choice.
Right.
Which is what you and I discuss as hitting the bottom.
That's it.
So, and this is difficult at different reasons. So if I'm like an investor in the stock market, right, and I have billions of dollars, I can liquidate and acquire capital very, very quickly. What's the other end of the spectrum? Well, I mean, you get down to the family. What the fuck can they liquidate and adapt? Savings, right? I mean, it's not like, and they experience a loss.
Yep.
Whereas the capitalist just experiences a transaction cost. The small business does the same thing. Well, I mean, if I get a small business, I'm probably running on 8% or 4% or something, or if I'm lucky 20%, and after taxes that's 4%. So I mean, what can I adapt? I can't. I can just constrain. This is why and so if you keep moving up the hierarchy, what has to happen is a lot of families and businesses have to fail before they'll switch double down. What you see, of course, is that there's contrarians. I'm a contrarian, and we act early because we don't look at maximizing our take in the now.
Not the moment, right?
We look at making a consistent take free of losses. All right. And so what you want to do is say, my argument with the restaurateurs, which I've had in the past, is they don't want to start a new restaurant, or they don't want to pay for. Why? Because they're maximized their income off the restaurant. I'm using restaurants as an example because everybody understands them, and it's the business that's most likely to fail in America. So why? Is because they're easy to start, right? They're dependent basically on location and quality, a few other factors, service. But they're incredibly fragile because people maximize their income take from the restaurant instead of, in other words, they take out the $200,000 of debt to build the restaurant. And they start paying this down, but they pay it down over how many years? Well, what's the life cycle of a restaurant? 7 years, maybe. So they need to pay off the restaurant in 7 years so they can redecorate basically the whole thing for the next 7 years. But if you do that, that eats into their income. So they don't do that. They maximize their income out of it, and they don't redecorate every 7 years or 5 years because people want to eat at a place that feels new and clean.
That's right.
And it's also easier. You also do that. So we all try to maximize our take, and that's what causes the problem. And that's the difference. That's another example of the tendency of humans to hyper consume in the moment, rather than than consume in ratio to their capitalization. Right? Not we all of it, but most of us do that. It's very frustrating when you see it, because it's the same reason. What is it? The example, you can't tell a kid of 17 that smoking will kill him at 60.
That's right.
Right? It's the same. You can't tell a 304, oh, this is a new one, that she'll be single and lonely at 50. Come on, I said that one just to get your reaction. And you were thinking about, I should have waited to whatever else you were doing.
I was writing down consuming ratio to capitalization.
Yes.
That one seemed particularly useful.
It is. It's true, right? I mean,
Right.
I mean, I remember, I had a customer who's Asian, of course. And I used to talk to him because he was another high IQ guy. So, and he said to me, I remember I offended him once by asking personal questions, because that's rude to Asians, right? Personal question. And I said, I apologize. It's a matter, I'm demonstrating respect, that I admire you and that I would like to be like you. And of course, then all of a sudden he's my friend. So he says, the secret is really simple. Just save half of what you make.
That sounds good.
That's it. There's no other strategy necessary. And there's no other thinking necessary.
And to
And
minimize the behavioral investment.
you're right. You save your way into the middle class, and you use those savings to invest your way into the upper class. Something with Max Stoic said yesterday again, so I shared it because it's so true. Now, some of us save our money differently. Some of us put it in our houses. We pay down our equity in our houses. Some way we put it in our children.
Right.
Me, I build it in businesses. I mean, I rarely had cash. I mean, my whole life. Why? Because everything's in the business. But, there's also benefits to keeping everything in the business. The business starts paying for things, and
there's all kind of tax advantage.
there's all sorts of advantages to having things in the business. So, but what you do is you're always short of cash, because a business that's growing is hungry for cash. Right? I mean, but I mean, what's the return on grow? I mean, if you average it out, I'm like, well, let's say I paid myself $200,000, right? But I could take another 100,000, but I'm putting that in the business. The difference is, for every 100,000 I leave in the business for a year, I basically double. I can't make that return anywhere else.
That's right.
Not under my control. So, I mean, Alora and I were famous for, we've got to buy this company, right? So we're going to live on fucking pasta and whatever, or we're going to go to spend, we want to spend 3 weeks in Europe instead of a week. And we would just do without, right? But that's how you make it. But most people, I think, is the problem you and I have discussed before, is they get their entertainment from consumption instead of production. And that's the problem for most people, is their entertainment from, they have to get their entertainment from consumption, which burns their capital, which would otherwise be saved. So that's why you want to find something to work on, or some set of things to work on. They either share the cost burden, sports, right? Friends, or you want to you want to invest your time in work. I'm a lifetime workaholic, so much that I need therapy for it. I needed therapy for it. You don't have to work all the time, Kurt. You can actually take some time off now and then, work myself into the hospital and wonder why. And so, you know, I mean, but you don't have to go that far. You could just try to find things that are interesting to do that make you money. But most of us don't. We gotta listen to music, get high, you know, watch sports, play video games, and that's fucking awful for you. I used to play video games after work because the only way I could unwind enough to sleep so I could be high performing again the next day.
There you go.
Right? I mean, it's just anyway. Have I closed that loop? Yeah. So is there another topic you want to get on before I tell you how you were right? You were.
I know. I'm ready to go.
You that good because you're ready to go.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So I've been saying that the nuclear thing is a very low risk.
Yes, sir.
But we got signals. We got SIGINT yesterday and it spread. I don't know, leaked really fast. And so something it looks like it might happen. So it's going to be.
Now the concern is this: it's not just that the Russians might do it because you're pushing them up against the wall, but it's like that the friendlies, the anti-Russians may do it as a false flag to make the Russians look bad. It's like there's I know you shake your head at me. That's fine. It doesn't matter. It's increasing risk. It's too high risk. All of it's just too high risk, and it's like for no gain.
Okay, so here's the deal. Anybody with enough responsibility to be in a room like that is going to think like me and not like that. Because you can't.
I hope you're correct.
Well, I mean, we know that's the case because we've got tons of information on it over decades. Because people are the same. They don't like people that are they don't like people that are unpredictable and hold strong opinions in matters of high risk. So all these organizations, like from my neighbor when I was a kid, the oldest son was a Minuteman silo operator. And you know they're like the most stable.
Yeah. I get that. No, I'm concerned about the people who issue orders.
Right, but nobody follows orders, you know.
I understand what you're saying.
Right, and so,
but the most important thing to recognize is that the people who issue orders try to find people who follow orders.
Well, I know, but so there are conditions under which it's rational for those orders to be followed, right? But that's different from saying that, you know, somebody's going to create a false flag operation. The reality is that there's a reason they're not moving people into Ukraine, right? And they're actually telling people to retreat. And so there's a reason for that, and that's because they're losing badly. And their economy can't keep up. Their recruiting can't keep up. And they're losing political legitimacy. So under that circumstance, you know, you're really into, are they going to let him, are the people around him going to let him do this at the fact that they're going to be dead? Or are they going to try to they're going to try to scare people? Because you got to understand Russian minds, to scare people in the rest of the world to by the use of nuclear weapons. They might actually do so that realize there's their other option here, as they've said Russians said on national TV the other day. You know, they have a lot of dumb bombs. I mean, a phenomenal number of dumb bombs. They've only, I mean, I've seen the count yesterday, the day before, of how many smart weapons they have left. And I mean, they basically, if they use them, they're screwed because they can't defend the country anymore. Right? They want it. That's why they're preserving the Air Force and some of because that's how you defend yourself, right? It's different from projecting power for them. So, and then the other thing is that a tank is $5 million and a plane is 100. I mean,
yep.
Right. You lose one plane, it's like losing a whole lot of tanks. And the difference is that it takes years to make a pilot.
Yep.
And weeks to make a tank operator. So, well, maybe months, but years versus months. So, if they're telling friendly countries to leave, tell their populations to leave, they're either going to use the air to deliver because Ukraine doesn't have enough anti-air to
Yeah.
stop that. They're either going to do that or they're going to use nukes.
Well, I just, like I say, this high risk. The whole thing's high risk. And
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that, that your argument, most people's argument is don't back them too much into a corner. Of course, the American preference was tire them out, exhaust them. Don't put them in a corner. But the problem at this point is that Putin's going to get killed by his own people if he doesn't, or replaced, which means he's dead, right? If he doesn't recover from this mistake. And so, if you look at I pushed this out. Some German analyst did a great job yesterday. Better than I would do. If you look at Russia's future, the country's falling apart. So they look at it as more existentially than
yes.
And so the point that they might get their military completely wiped out by Europe, that's not a false flag. That's baiting Americans and Europe into a real war, so they can keep escalating. So I see the strategy from their side as making sense. They can't win, but they can. But there's a myth that wars are always won. It's usually that everybody loses. And somebody.
There you have it. It's just it's just kind of a downer. That's why I'm glad you're breaking that episode into 2 episodes. Because it's like that second half was just kind of like, oh my, it's the wet blanket.
Well, I don't have if John and I succeeded on the political path, I would take an inspirational, but that's not my job anymore. So I just do the analysis. So, I have a good record of prediction, and I think that's a value in what I do. So I'd like to preserve my record of prediction, even if it's not very inspirational. Anyway, so you got that look on your face like you want to change topics or do something like that.
No, it's related. It's like there's an interesting conversation I had last night, late for me, from the East Coast, from a friend of mine who was on vacation. And he went to a meeting. He ran into, there's a group of people of large numbers on the East Coast, Civil Defense League is what he called them. And I had not heard of them before. And it's like, they sounded related. And I was like, okay, that one, I just wanted to report that and put out a feeler to seek further information. I couldn't find any this morning. But he said they sounded like similar in function to what we would be interested in linking up with.
Yeah, I actually met some of these guys in when I was down there. Yeah. Well, we've got a branch here in Connecticut too.
I figured. Anyway, that's all I have.
Keeping bear arms groups. Okay. So I told you were right. Did it make you feel better? Usually you enjoy it when I tell you you're right.
I would like it more if it's like this. If I'm wrong, I would be happier. Because it's like, I would prefer to be wrong about the odds of a nuclear war being unacceptably high.
Yeah.
In fact, I tell people this, I don't take much joy in being right. There you have it. except when Kurt tells me, but not this time.
All right, I'm waiting for my allergy medicine to kick in.
Is that it? It's dose response.
Sorry?
Dose response.
Yeah. I didn't take it early enough. One second.
That's right.
Oh, Christians. I don't get them. I really don't.
Who's that?
Fundamentalists.
I don't understand what that means.
Well, I get a lot of, I just heard you for the first time. I just now heard you for the first time in an interview. You said you hate talking about theology, blah, blah, blah. You could have said any other name and I would have shrugged it off. Oh, my God is, right? I fell out of my chair when you said who your God is. Good thing I wasn't taking a sip of my coffee. You could have said any other name and I would have shrugged it off, but the entity you named is actually the beast of Revelations 13, who men call the Antichrist. I could show you what the fuck?
What did he say he was talking about? What did he say you were saying?
I have no idea.
That's how I gauged it. I'm like,
but
I don't believe so. I'm very sensitive to what you have to say.
I get these every day.
Really?
I get this stuff every day. And
it's semi-delusional, it's like they see in the tea leaves what they prefer to see.
Right. And it's really disturbing how many there are. And they're otherwise good people.
I'm sure they're good people.
But I mean, it's bad enough that you study philosophy instead of science, is the way I look at it.
That was rude.
It's worse if you study theology instead of philosophy or science.
Right.
If you're going to study anything, you should at least study the Greeks, because at least that's European natural religion, right? I mean, that's that because whether that's philosophy or religion is
right. It's Proto-European thought processes.
Right. I mean, you want to study that. I mean, you can't. I mean, everybody will tell you that. I mean, anybody who studies the Greeks, right? You read the stuff, it's amazing how much they got right. Right. I mean, you just it's just amazing. And you realize how at the time, we're talking about 800 to 500 BC.
Yes.
We're not talking about a long fucking time ago. Right. And so you realize that most everything's a counter revolution to them. It's not actually innovation. These aren't parallel innovations. They're actually
it's like you see the innovations that they created on a small scale using hand tools and slave labor on skilled labor.
Yeah.
But the Antikythera mechanism and just crazy devices and
right.
innovations.
So if you've got, here's my thing though. I remember very clearly being very young. I had to be pre-65, 66. So it was when I was under 6 or 7 years, under 6, right? Listening to German fairy tales record, right? I mean, it was very deeply, and it really affected. I remember reading German fairy tales. And this is also the time when Walt Disney is strongest, which is German fairy tales, right? So it was that era of thought, and I remember going to church, right? And I always thought the fairy tales were better than the church, and it didn't, because Anyway, so then you get up and you're like, this whole church stuff doesn't really make sense, but you realize you're being programmed differently. I mean, in retrospect, I realize how valuable a Catholic education is. I'm not sure about the Catholic Mass, but the Catholic education was fucking unbelievable, because it's basically education and morality compatible with natural law, right? I mean,
Right.
right. Uh, so anyway, so I remember this difference. And then, you get up and like in seventh grade, we had to read the Bible in school and we had to read the Greek classics. And I'm like, I still am stuck with, why the fuck would you read this Bible thing when you have this over here?
Okay.
Well, you have all this because it goes from the Greek semi-philosophy, to the natural philosophy and moral philosophy. Then it goes into the empiricism and science and law, and it goes into, you just see the trajectory of which thing it produces better ends. And especially once you sort of understand what happened in the Dark Ages versus what happened once Aristotle was reintroduced into Europe in 1200. And you're like, well, I mean, it's just, you can't get around it. I mean, you could argue that the argument I make as well, Christianity as a cult was fine, but as an institution, it was fucking evil. So, never fine. It wasn't fine. It was fucking awesome because it solved the problem of being at the bottom. But as an institution, it was fucking cancer. The miracle is that the church got captured by the aristocracy, and it basically created a new generation of mental slaves instead of physical slaves. But I mean, it did have to compete with the law and the military and the aristocracy, so it could only get more juridical primacy between monarchies. It could never attain centralization like it did in Byzantium.
Right.
So what you see is that then you have the Greek or the Muslims get all fundamentalist, which drives all the Muslim scholars into Europe. So by 1200, you've reintroduced European natural religion, Greek thought, into it, and you get, of course, Aquinas. It's like, okay, it turns out these guys are right. How do we make this fit? And by the time you get to, then you wait, and by the time you get to Smith and Hume, Locksmith and Hume, okay, now you've gone all the way around. You've got Christian ethics, right? You've got Christian ethics combined with Arian heroism.
Right.
And so the problem is, of course, we haven't had Stoicism come back, right? We haven't had the ability. The church failed, and we got Marxism instead of Stoicism.
Oh.
I want you to understand what that's sort of the virtues of what we do, right? You realize there's only so many cooperative there's only so many means of influence, there's only so many means of argument, there's only so many kinds of institutions, there's only and you're still trying to produce mindfulness, and mindfulness can either be close to or vary from the universe, right? And so you realize that this historical narrative that I just gave isn't it isn't a relativistic one, it's an absolute one, because you're converging on parsimony, which is invariance.
That's right.
And so it's like, I don't want to throw the Christian baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, but we need to find some way to make Stoicism work. What?
Is the rain too loud?
I can't hear anything.
Perfect. That's good. I can hear it. It's very loud here. The rain is hitting my skylights.
Is it?
It's so loud. I'm like, I turned the volume up. I'm like, okay, sorry for the distraction.
What microphone do you use?
The Yeti.
Okay, so you have the next step up from mine. So anyway, this whole thing of Christians make me crazy. Because
Right.
if you want to study Jesus, do it all fucking day long.
Okay.
But if you want to be,
You don't like the old books.
they're evil. It's an evil God.
I think that's going to cause some problem when that's heard.
It's true though.
I'm not here to argue. I want you to tell me why it's evil. Because it's like by the standard definition that we would apply using the language as a metric.
God, what's his name? Jehovah's an evil God who demands your submission and commands you to obey.
Yeah, there's the interesting function of
And
it.
there's hold on.
Yeah.
That's part. The real problem is good versus evil instead of Indo-European order versus chaos. And so that was an invention by the Iranians, right? To separate the good evil. And that's fucking horrible. And so the second thing is you have this amplification because there was the industry. See, we have witchcraft and magic in the West, right? Our people are metalsmiths. So they came up. So this is less. Magic is under your control. Spirits are not.
Yes.
And so if you look at, there's if you hear oil boils, something, boil and bubble, cauldron burn, and what is it called? Fire burn and cauldron bubble, that kind of stuff. But there's a tempo or a rhyme to ancient Germanic spells, but they're all recipes.
Yeah.
Right. So this teaches you about the world, that just like order versus chaos, just like recipes versus other command, right? Command from others or up on high, that the gods are merely troublesome families like yours that need to be circumvented. Right? This is Europeans produce agency and Semites produce submission. Now, the problem with agency and submission is one we've discussed all the time, is that submission says you're not responsible, whereas agency says you are. And so this is the problem with Semitic civilization and Semitic religion is you're not responsible. Now, Christianity tried to solve this by with free will. Is that God gives you the choice to be good or not. Right. Right. But over there, it's like if God wills it, right? I mean, the Muslim thing.
Interesting because there in my estimation of it, in my reading of the Bible, is that that God is a dynamic function as recognized by the people.
Well, I mean,
and so it's like the premise that God is the same throughout the Bible is wholly questionable in my mind, because it's like that is not how I read it.
Yeah, but I don't. Again, this is one of those things, right? That's subjective test. The problem is, how do people behave independent about what you and I think in the aggregate, and how people behave, which is evident by all this crap I get, is that it's fucking science.
Is that what science?
Fundamentalists treat theology as equivalent or superior to.
Oh, that's their foundation. Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, it's just like, I don't object to Christianity at all. I consider myself one. Of course, they don't like that, but right. I think Jesus was an innovative philosopher on the scale of Buddha. Right. I mean, he was there and he had an answer, and the answer works for the lower classes. So, and it was important because the lower classes needed an answer to Indo-Europeanism and the expansion that caused greater diversity in the population. So, right. So I mean, I get it. I get it completely. The problem I have is churchianity and fundamentalism.
But the fundamentalist thing is interesting because you have competing fundamentalists who have divergent subjective interpretations of the foundational texts, and that is not a decidable function.
Yeah. So I mean, if you, I use the what are the myths like Noah and
Right.
Adam and Eve. Those are incredibly valuable. Jesus' story, the trial of the trials of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. That's a very good story. But there's a lot of stupid shit in that book. I mean, Cain and Abel is a good story. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But it's myth. It's myth. It's not history. Now, do all myths have a basis in history? Absolutely. I mean, there was a flood. It wasn't like they said, and it wasn't built. The ship wasn't built like they think. But I mean, there's more than one flood. There's a whole bunch of them, because that's what happened over the past 10,000 years, 15,000 years. So I mean, these, is the Cain and Abel happen? Yeah, the agrarians that raise sheep, and the herdsmen that raise sheep, and the agrarians who may raise plants, live in the city. They had a natural conflict, right? They had different loyalties. Adam and Eve is fucking. That's getting to be more true every day as I get older, and I fucking don't like it at all, right? So,
sorry, Kurt.
Yeah. So I mean, those are valuable, but I mean, so is.
So they're analogical in their function,
right? They're stories that convey a truth. So I quote the elves and the shoemaker all the time, because it's metaphysically part of my mythos that we attribute to the world, to agents in the world, that it's natural to do that. All right. So I'm always making fun of, well, the elves must have done it.
right?
Right. So I thought of trolls as a kid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I still think of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fuck. I can't believe I let that out of my mouth, and I didn't see that coming. God damn it.
We have all these bridges around here.
Ghosts were a part of my childhood. I was terrified of ghosts because I was my mother and I in a 7,000 square foot house.
Wow.
It's a mansion, right? It's not a house. It's a mansion, right? So I mean, that stuff made sense to me, right? The ghost stories and whatever. And so I still have trouble with, what's that fucking video? Something. There's a horror show movie that came out that's on like the 5th or 8th version, something phenomenon or whatever, where there's a video at night and the covers get taken off, and eventually the demon comes into, I have to turn the lights on if I watch that fucking movie, right? I'm
not keen on horror movies.
Yeah.
I don't like them.
Well,
because I'm too suggestible. I'm not going to entertain that one.
I'm okay. Although if you look at my house in my log house, right? I'm out there, and you gotta say it's the raging rivers carved a valley between, right? So it's huge cliffs, 100-foot cliffs on either side of the road, and the space between it is only a quarter mile.
Yep,
like,
narrow. Yep.
So the road is here, and I live in this
dell. Yeah.
Right. And so the river's over there 30 feet off my back door, and my living room, which is fucking enormous, is got windows on 3 sides. Nice. I can't watch a fucking zombie movie in that house alone. I just can't do it. The suggestion is too powerful.
Right.
Anyway, the point being that if we have all these fairy tales, but the fairy tales don't claim to be true. That's the difference. They stay
analogical and
stay analogical. And so you can use them as wisdom. I
But
mean,
not as a claim of fundamental truth.
right. And so that's my problem with it, is that
I understand.
and so I get these every day, and it's like, dude,
That's a
I'm
good
not
one.
I'm not going to participate in your socially constructed hallucination, right? I'm just not gonna. Right?
That's right. It's like, because the issue is this. It's like you're entering into a verbal quagmire.
Yes.
You do. So you just block that.
No, I get it. I just disturbed by how many of them there are.
And yeah, but see, your problem is this. You're like you're
Just you
you
beat
got
me
this-
up for that. You're going to correct me on this one too.
Yeah,
You beat me up for this stuff all the time.
I know, because it's like this. It's like you're paying attention to stuff that you should ignore. And see, the reason I know that is because you're bringing it to my attention, and I should ignore it too. But you're an amplifier. I got to turn the signal down, brother. It's like we're squelching this nonsense. We have to burn those dendrites. Okay, those dendrites are not providing useful
Yeah.
predictive information, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that all it is?
Yeah.
Those dendrites that connect you to those people do not provide useful predictive information, and therefore have to be burned. Those bridges start to come down.
Yeah, except that that's a personal statement, but a political statement is they're fucking out there in large numbers.
Wait, no, but the issue is you're not qualified to discuss it, because you're like scaling from a human number. It's like this. There's everybody
job.
out there. There's
what I do.
everybody out there in huge numbers, man. There's everybody out there in huge numbers, and it's like they're attracted to you because you're saying signals that they want to interact with, because they want to spar with you. And it's like, yeah, you don't get to spar with me. You're not so ready.
Well,
to
I'm not saying I'll spar with them. I just delete
No.
stuff.
They presume to spar with you, because it's like this. Now, my martial arts teacher in Virginia, he's like this. This guy is good, and he was a world-class martial artist, And he's like this. I said, you need to have a camp, and he goes, no, we don't need to have a camp, because that will attract evil spirits. Okay, and the evil spirits, there will be an infinite amount of contenders that want to just beat you down and don't want to learn anything to prove themselves. It's like the gunfighters.
Yeah.
So you're like the head gunfighter. It's like everybody wants to kill Wild Bill. It's like, fuck that. It's like you just don't even have that conversation, because you got too many glass sides on your log cabin, and it's a horror story.
I think you just gave me a useful bit of advice.
Was that? Thank you. That was another. You're right, Brad. Now, I appreciate that for what it is.
No, you're right all the time. I just resist telling you whenever possible.
I know. I appreciate that too. It's okay. I respect it. You gotta be.
You know what it is? It's that I feel I keep having this. I need to understand you. If I can only understand you, I can. No. This is what I'm doing. This is what my subconscious.
Oh, you're trying to understand the people.
If I can understand you, I can fix you. If I can understand you, I can.
Oh,
fix
yeah.
you. All right.
Yeah, no.
So that's the machine in my head working.
Oh, yeah. No, it's like this. That you don't have time. Not for these ones.
No, I mean, again, though, but I don't want to fix any individual Christian or Nazi, right? Or leftist, right? I don't want to.
Right.
What I want to do is, how do I put into law a thing which preserves whatever good
that they generate,
that you generate, but prohibits the bads you generate? Right. That's
I get that.
That's my algorithm.
Oh, so you're running a research algorithm.
Right. It surprises to me. Okay. So I love you, right? Everybody knows I love you, admire you, respect.
Thank you.
Why is that so hard for everybody to understand? That's all I do. I mean, literally, that's all I do all the time. If I can understand, right? If I can disambiguate, to first principles, I can find a way. The problem you get to with,
I see the problem here.
You see,
because you cannot correct that irrational one.
Right.
It's a child. It's got to grow its own way out, right?
But it took me a long time to understand that. I mean, I really worked hard on religion, right? I mean, it was years of work, and you realize that people need it.
Yes.
right? And so, and it's not like the Dawkinses and these guys, right? These people
Yes,
need it. On the other hand, it's not that they need an Abrahamic religion.
right.
What they need is sedation. They need a ritual and cognitive and narrative means, right? With cognitive, emotional,
Yeah,
physical, right? They need all three
to
means
connect it, to
of
ground it out.
to ground. Right? They've just got to hold down the natural crazy that's in all of us. That
That's
comes from
right.
because the minute you get consciousness, you're going to get crazy.
You,
It's
it's
just going
just
to
how
happen.
it goes.
They go hand in
Okay.
hand. So,
Right.
go ahead.
No, I respect that. I understand the premise, and it's like, yeah, yeah. So what you're trying to do then in the law will be to limit the scale of operation of crazy.
Right. It's like this is why I said I spent a lot of time on this. I spent more than a year trying to test this, but it's like the Christians came after me because they were right. I said the logical conclusion of prohibiting lying is that Christianity can't exist. And I'm like, well, that's not true.
That's not true. Wait, who said that?
What?
Who said that?
The fundamentalists. What they mean, but they're wrong. I'm like, Christianity is just fine. Your use of Christian dogma, or other words, quotation, scripture, whatever,
Yes.
as deductive argument can't survive. In other words, you could say in other words, you can use it as analogy, but you
Right.
can't use it as truth. That doesn't mean you have to. That's all. When you're in
It's not testimonial.
it's not testimonial in public to the public and matters public. But I mean, it's too. They see it as a threat to their self-image because they've based their entire worth on mastery of this social construction.
I understand you.
And the
Right, because it's
and the
like
illusion
I
the
watched
illusion is based on social construction. So if you deprive them of social construction, they can't have the illusion, and therefore they're deprived of the mindfulness that comes from the belief that they're agents in control of their lives and understanding the world through this social construction illusion. So I mean, it's just they're not wrong.
I see it as more like a threat to their
Status.
social status, right?
That's right.
Because you're limiting their social status by such legal means.
Correct. Well, but so this is the issue. I said, well, I mean, I have a couple of choices here, right? You specifically leave a hole open for Christianity. In other words, it's if as long as it's stated, it's not a lie, right? We're going to leave this hole open,
right,
for our religion because for this reason. That's not a truth. That's a choice, and there are political
choices. It's a preference, right? It's
right.
A preference.
Now, the only thing you have to say is, well, you can't include that in legislation or anything in it has to affect legislation. All right, that doesn't. So you insulate legislation or government from this, but you preserve the consequence. So I mean that's one of the only choices that's available. The other choice is to reform it.
That sounds hard,
right? And the third choice, is to replace it with something better.
Okay.
Now, my view, which you and I've discussed, is that in the 1800s we needed to produce a reform of Christianity in response to Darwin and Spencer, and we needed, and just as the Germans had with Romanticism had nearly reconstructed our ancient religion. So my view is what happened was the Marxists produced an even more desirable.
Yeah, they outraced that. They outraced it.
They outraced Darwin, Maxwell, Nietzsche, Spencer, and the German.
That is they reformed their Mesopotamian mytho generating system.
Right.
That's what that is.
And the difference is that the trajectory of restoring European natural religion with Christianity with it. In other words, taking Christianity to the complete unification was in natural law. with Jesus as, prophet or philosopher being arbitrary distinction among all the other philosophers. We could have, they could have made that happen. It could have happened, but the thing is that pushes responsibility on you, and it means that you're so, it doesn't counter the fact that as the Industrial Revolution progressed, your awareness of your social status progressed.
Increases. Yeah.
And so, and secondly, our historical division between church and state didn't allow the state to grab onto this and say we have to make this a mission, right? Because we left it up to the church. Well, what happened instead was the church died, the academy took over and adopted Marxism because it gave credentialists rather than meritocratics advantage. So I mean, in retrospect, it's really obvious what happened.
But it's interesting because it's like it's an empirical understanding, because it's like it takes a minute to gather enough information to go, oh, mistake.
This is really obvious.
It is now, but it's like that took 150 years.
Well, it did. It was hard. And you look at someone like Nietzsche, right? And that fucking guy. I mean, I only pay attention to one. I always says most philosophers have. I mean, Hayek said this. He says, most philosophers have one insight. He says, I have two. And,
I'm double most.
Well, he was seeing it. He actually said it with humility. He says, I absolutely have one. I might have two. I think I have two. Right. And the problem is Nietzsche had one insight, which was the immorality of Christianity. It's a master slave dynamic and versus the heroic. And so he does this in his first book. All the rest of the stuff is him fucking around trying to figure this out. And so you could, and he's going mad while he's writing this stuff, which is it might actually be an advantage. I'm not sure.
I only go like this. Like I don't try to second guess such mental gymnastics.
But I mean, he's brilliant. But he's trying to solve this one problem, which is, what do we do? And of course, he fails. This is the problem. Nietzsche failed. So the same thing with the Romanticists, the German Romanticists. They tried to bring about the classical restoration. They failed. The Italians brought about the Italians succeeded with bringing back the Greek aesthetics, but they couldn't get it into politics, right? They couldn't get into philosophy and politics, because it's too close to the church. But up in England, they could get it into philosophy and politics, right? So that's where it took root. And then once the Germans invented the printing press, they wanted to compete with France and Germany. So they give Germans an inch and they'll figure out how to make it a mile, right? I mean, it's just very German, right? They're wonderful. I love them. All right. And so they created, that by the middle of the early 1800s, the center of thought in Europe is Germany, right? It's not England anymore. So, and then by the early 1900s, we have the 1890s as the center of the world being London. By 1900, it's New York. Why? Yeah. Because the economic engine had moved there. Yep. So, I mean, all this stuff is going on, and you just start to see it as incentives, and people are like, wow, I'm free now. I can have stuff. There's promise, but these working conditions, I want, Well, people say that we're working conditions, and you had, what's his name, the English author there, what's his name? He wrote The Tale of Two Cities.
Dickens.
This Dickensian communist bullshit is that the reality is that it's the same thing in China. Go to China right now and look at those people living on the farm. They live in destitute poverty.
Yes.
Now, Britons were never that poor. But why do those people in China go to work in the cities and factories?
It's better than the farm.
It's better than the farm. So why did people go from farms to cities? because it's better than the farm.
That's right. Otherwise, there's no gravitational.
Right. Now, the problem is what happens to sources to community? What happens to your insurance when you go from
Yeah, it gets sold out.
it gets sold out? So this is natural alienation that happens during this process. So it's rational that people want this stuff. And the other thing is that what you have,
It certainly is.
and then when you have like in the past, we tend to think of these kings and whatever as wealthy, but they're not even as wealthy as your average middle class person by comparison.
Not compared to today.
No. So you look at the past and there was a big difference, but it really wasn't that big. It showed up in clothing
Yep.
and food, right? But I mean it didn't. But if you look at the industrial age, the class difference was accelerating so quickly that, but that's all it did. It accelerated quickly and then it's decelerating like now. So the only reason richer people are getting richer today is the Fed is pumping money in through credit rather than through liquidity.
That's right. They're picking the winners and pointing them.
Right. I mean, it's like,
money
oh wow,
flowing
it's
in.
ending up in rich people's hands.
Oh,
Duh.
surprise. Wait, so see, I already prepared for this because I was going to talk about this in relation to the Turchin and the overproduction of elites.
Yes, I came up with a new term thanks to you.
Oh, do tell.
I put it on Twitter. I have to remember exactly what it was. I came up with a neologism.
Uh-oh.
Credentialed ineptitude. The post-war conversion of institutions of higher learning by that had previously pulled from upper and middle classes with loyalty to civilization, nation, institutions, and culture from the military and industry with demonstrated competency into credentialed hostiles.
Oh my. But it is. So it's interesting because it's like I talked about the TSA a minute ago.
Yes.
And I said they're creating a legion of underclass.
Yes.
As a special interest. It will have leaders that can be credentialed inept people that are consider themselves falsely to be elite. And that's who I think Turchin is talking about.
Correct.
They're the mandarins who take positions in the bureaucracy and they're just oversupplied and they're inept and over-credentialed and they have behaviorally economical, we talked about this today, their behavioral inertia to continue doing what they're doing.
Okay, so here's the difference. You want to get I just want you to be prepared for the.
I'm ready. I'm writing.
No, prepared for the ouch.
Okay.
So what is the difference between superiority in European cognition and superiority in Ashkenazi cognition?
Okay.
They're verbal and we're material, right? Predictive.
Yeah.
So those institutions that allowed in Jews became verbal, and those institutions that didn't allow in Jews maintained engineering. And you see this most clearly in California between Stanford and Berkeley. And so what happened is that you can test easily for verbal acuity without actually demonstrating competency, and you can only test competency through demonstrated performance. And so institutions became biased to credentials, people who were verbally acute, even if there was no demonstrated competency that results. And so this is what happened. And so if you combine that with the Jewish pill pull, which is outcome consistent, which is experience and outcome consistency versus logical and material consistency, you end up with what we have today. So there's a correlation with the Jewish introgression, Marxist introgression, Jewish introgression, and credentialed introgression.
But I would just say this is interesting phenomena there in that little discourse. It tells me why Marx was able to complete the task faster than the West was.
Correct.
Because it's the amount of behavioral inertia in generating stories is smaller than generating reality.
Correct. Or the way we, correct. Say that again. I just want you to repeat it so it sticks.
The cost of this rate of change of generating social constructed
Narrative.
stories
Yeah.
is faster than the rate of generating competency and material change.
Correct. And what if you're telling people what they want to hear?
You're just creating a sink, a behavioral sink.
So what is cheaper to produce, lies or truth?
Lies.
So what happened?
Lies.
Yeah. So the thing is, what's happening in the sciences, the economies, politics, and world strategy, as the lies are being exposed. But we lost a century and a half because of it. We lost a dark age of it over. We lost, we didn't restore Roman levels of civilization until after Napoleon.
Yeah.
All right. So 1,500 years. We lost 1,500 years. So is Marx a bad? So tell me what is the cost of Marxism? How do you price that 1,500 years? How do you price the suffering of the Dark Ages?
It's irreplaceable.
You can't replace it. So that's why we have to stop it. We have to stop woke because it's the second Dark Age. Third.
Yeah, I see that, and I like, yeah, and it's just a matter of by what means.
Well, I mean, I advocate doing it by just showing up and demanding we implement the laws that stop false promise, lying and fraud to our people. But we may have to. It depends on how. If we can do it by showing up, where it takes a bunch of hanging, or if it takes skull piles and a bunch of burning.
Oh my!
It just depends on what does it take to get there. I actually prefer the skull piles
I know.
Because I want retribution.
I
but
know.
You can't. If I study my own law, I say, well, you can't demand. You can demand only change. You can't develop. You can't tell somebody that what they believe is good, and they think they're doing good.
Everybody believes they're doing good.
Right? You can't punish them for that. You can only correct them.
That's right. Just give them a chance to go to a place where they have a freedom to keep on doing whatever they want to do, as long as it's not in proximity of you or your social circles that you wish to protect.
Well, I mean, in theory, we're responsible for. Why are we not responsible for protecting the world from them? So
there's a limit on the field of responsibility that I can accept.
Right. That's the only answer. That's the correct answer.
Because I materially don't have the capacity to ensure that much.
Right. So if the world wants to be stupid, we sort of have to let them.
Yes, that's okay.
By example, because we've discovered that replacement works. In other words, genocide seems to work pretty well, but that is not something we're
not interested in that.
So the only solution then is separation, because colonialism doesn't work. You can't colonize these people because it's genetic.
Okay.
Excuse me. You can't colonize the third of people that are undomesticable. And furthermore, it's way better to get them out of the gene pool.
Okay, that's easily misinterpreted. That's why you separate.
To separate from them so that they're out of your society.
Yeah, that's all.
I mean, think of it that way.
But it's separatism is not unreasonable.
You save what is it? I mean, look how long it took Europe about 400 years. You love this. You don't like this term, but the word is genetic pacification.
Yes, I know what that is.
Through criminal prosecution. So if we aggressively prosecute people, hang them, within a 6 or 8 generations, you can clean up your gene pool.
Well, I want to for the audience, I want to point out, look up bog people images. Then what? That's cool, isn't it? It was I know I would mention his name, but I don't want to mention his name. But my paleontology professor's favorite form of fossilization. Bog people. This relates to genetic pacification through hanging by Kurt's understanding.
Well, except that we freaking industrialized it after 1200. I mean, they figured out that these people are a problem.
Hmm.
You forget that, Europe, England at least. England wasn't poor really. It's not in the year 1000. People in England weren't poor. So you really had to get into the Dark Age, the Black Death before they had serious problems. And
Right.
A couple of starvation periods there because of the climate, but in any event, where was I going with that? So, but you hang. If you took how many people do we put in? We put a lot of people. If you hung all those people in jail,
Oh my.
right,
Yeah.
before they can reproduce, 6 generations, you've made a big freaking difference. Because we've done this study, right? We've had this study for generations now of how costly one psycho chick's, one psycho chick's offspring are is just one crazy chick who reproduces is a plague.
I will point to another thing to research if the observers haven't researched this, which is the rat utopia experiment.
Yes.
It's worthy of note.
Is it rat or mouse?
It is. It must be one.
It's mouse utopia, I think.
I had done both. I think
it's mouse.
Yes.
Well, rats will do the same thing, but it's just harder to do it with them.
Mouse utopia. So look that up. Leave some comments about bog people, and leave some comments about mouse utopia. It's very good. It's very good. And it is it's unintentional social disruption caused by mutation.
Without adversarial constraint, the need, in other words, without limits, environmental limits, in close proximity, all social orders break down. So this
is just a matter of time before the social order gets a fatal flaw in this communication system between people.
And it shows up in end of reproduction, which is what's happening now. So we do the same thing. There's no difference.
Mouse is just a model.
They're really cute. I had this one of my favorite etchings. My ex-wife kept a divorce, which made me very angry.
Oh,
little field mouse. It's a mesotent with a field mouse. I have a thing for field mice. I think they're cute. I wish I'd done a better. Is that a wish I had? I wish I'd made more of an effort to collect mesotints, because I think they brought me a lot of joy. You know what a mesotint is?
no.
So you know what an etching is, right? You scratch in metal.
Yeah.
Well, a mesotint is more like you scratch the hell out of the metal, and then you burnish things down, you make them lighter, and you put it in the acid a bunch of times. So if you do it well, it looks more like a photograph. Right?
Oh yeah, no. My business associate, I think that's what he ran into a fellow who was Italian or something, and he made this. It's a beautiful map of the world, and it's just a piece of metal in it. I don't know how it looks like that.
Yeah,
which is just an astounding piece of work.
And you take the print off, you ink it, you take the print off it, and it's just beautiful. And so what I like about it is, you can't make a quick mesotint. So it tends to be the kind of thing that only people that are pretty good do.
Yes.
Makes sense?
Because there's no fast
It's
Japanese,
not like painting, right? You can't just throw shit on the thing and say,
right? So what I spelled mezzotint.
MEZZO.
Ah, okay.
And so it ended up being my favorite form of art. It might be that I have lower sensitivity to color, right? I'm not really very color driven, space and line driven. So I just really enjoyed them. And a vacation for me of shopping for a mezzotint, right, gallery to gallery, is kind of interesting. That's a kind of joyous thing to do. It's like once you hit all the major museums, once you know the
You've
history,
seen about all there is to see.
right, you've seen all there is to see. You start going into what's below the greats, right? In other words, there's stuff that the market has decided over time is a great work of an era, right?
Yes.
But you get down into the secondary artists.
Oh, yes.
But then what you get down today is you get down to current artists.
Right, which has not been tested in the marketplace of time.
Right. And so it gives you an excuse to play. I mean, it's fun, right? I mean, it's like some people want to go to restaurants and taste food. And to me, I'd rather go taste art, right? Now, the problem is that there are a lot of greasy burger joints in art, if you get what I mean, because most of it's really quite bad. And the reason is the economics of it, right? Unless you can have a patron,
yes,
it's very hard to make it.
Yes,
and because there's only so much inventory you can produce.
That's right.
Of high quality, because what you're looking for is evident in art is the evidence of the hand of man. Right, you're looking for accumulated. So when your brain looks at something, it knows how many calories are in there, so to speak. Right.
Right.
It's sort of like looking at these goofy clock mechanisms that some of us are all fascinated with. There's just a lot of stuff going on there. Well, when you look at art, the same thing is going on. You're either reacting to design or reacting to content, right? I mean, somewhere along that spectrum. Or, excuse me, design, content, or hand of man.
Technique, yeah.
Right. And so, the problem with modern art is really only Russians are producing any because they have time, right? Because their economy.
Yep.
So you don't get you get most of our art today. I have a relative, she's very, very wealthy, very successful. But I don't think her art is very good. I mean, her craftsmanship is good, but it's gimmick. It's bourgeois art,
Just go like that. I have no comment on anybody who says bourgeois.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know what that means to.
I'm selectively unresponsive because the communists like to say it too much.
Yeah, when you say it about art, it means you're buying the art to signal you have taste you don't really have.
I understand. I get you.
Yeah, that's what it means. And so some people I go and they're like really proud of the art that they've bought somewhere, and I'm like, oh my God, that's fucking tacky as hell. Right. But it makes them happy. Right.
Isn't that nice?
They don't know that they're advertising. They're put a big L on their head. They bought the piece.
Oh my.
I bought this huge sculpture. And it's sort of like a pyramid, like this pyramid with a space inside. So it's 3 sides, except the bottom is solid, right? So it's 3 sides. And inside are 2 of these leather Buddhist prayer bags or something or other, It's like this mini temple. I love shit like that. Every time I look at it, I'm like, I'm not sure what that means, but all the associations are wonderful.
That's all right.
My
So
wife
get a
wanted
good
me to
emotional response.
I assume my wife got rid of it somewhere. I don't know where that fucking thing is.
Oh my.
My favorite piece still is this enormous etching of an oak tree. As big as me. I had it behind my desk, behind my chair, my desk. Love that piece. So print is it's it's hard to do shitty work and not have it be obviously shitty. Is that what makes sense? Anyway, why am I talking about art yet when I have stuff to talk about today? I have no idea.
Yeah, let's get to work.
So what time is it?
9:37, 12:37 your time,
So we've been at it an hour and a half intro. Okay.
roughly.
So I'm gonna pause, get some coffee.
Ah,
Is that all right?
we're gonna recharge. After our little artistic interlude,
I could talk about art.
I know, I think I would
Okay?
like to
If you
hear
think
it.
I can talk about law and morality, I can talk about art all fucking day long and love and revel. You know what it is? Because there's no emotion in everything else I do.
Right?
There's no feeling in it. But what I love talking about art is it's fulfilling. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's emotional.
It's emotionally rewarding to talk about because it's so beautiful. All right, anyway, but you literally can't talk because they've intentionally wiped out
I know.
our art. The Marxists did it on
I'm
purpose.
gonna wave at Jackson Pollock.
Can't. I'm not. Yeah. Well. Okay. So that's an interesting thing. Is that I can't really criticize what I call apartment artwork
Okay.
because we had the rise in these urban apartments
Yes.
and the rise in furniture for urban apartments
Okay.
and the rise in a volume of these apartments and
Okay.
a rise in demand
In the 20th century.
in the 20th century. The
Yep.
problem is they were trying to produce apartment artwork, right? And this other stuff. The problem is you can't produce it cheaply. Traditional artwork
Ah,
of
it's outscaled, economically out of scale.
you're out of scale. So I mean, if you want to produce, what's called a living room centerpiece, not
Right.
this big, but
Yeah.
Jackson Pollock size,
Right.
right? Or what we in the art school call bank paintings. There was
Right.
pretty shit with no meaning that takes up space.
That's it.
That's what it's what you joke about. You make your money on bank paintings,
Yes.
right? Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand.
Right. And so that market did arrive. It's the same reason the print market arrived.
Ah,
Netherlands is they just couldn't afford to produce and pay
you can't have that many experts making these things, man.
Well, not only that is that the people who had demand for the art couldn't afford to pay nobility prices in the new middle class.
That's right.
Right. So you're trying to show you're middle class. Well, that's what you were doing on you arrive.
It's bourgeois.
You buy art. Right. That's what it is. You're saying I've arrived. I'm nobility now.
Oh, I see.
Now we don't think of it that way, but that's what it is. That it's still that way, right?
Yes.
It's still that way. Is if you go to somebody's, because I remember, I can't. The guy's famous, so I won't say his name. All right. So I remember going to his house for a football on New Year's Day. He's bragging about his Picassos. Of course, I know quite a bit about Picasso. I'm like, shit, dude, you don't realize that this was like a sketch that he threw together like most people pass gas, right? It's
right.
Right. I mean, he's notorious for this, right? He's a
Yes.
notorious money printer, right? And that's what his style came from. Because if you look at his earlier work, he's a master painter,
Right.
but he just figured out how to make money,
Well,
right? I mean,
not a bad skill.
right? But I mean, the people don't know, right?
No, they just see it's money.
Well, I mean, they just see a thing and they say, "I've arrived," and I'm like, "Okay, you've arrived," right?
Right on.
One of the things we did collect, we collected art jewelry because Alora was, of course, influential in the politics of art jewelry. She was head of the Society of North American Goldsmiths, president of the Society of Goldsmiths, and which is the art jewelry wing of jewelry. They do Ornament magazine and that kind of crap. And so she was, did her board membership and whatever. And I love that association with the art committee because we got to go to meetings and
That's
hang
cool.
out with artists. And so I found it spiritually
Yes.
fulfilling to hang out with artists. So we had a tabletop with a glass table, big, huge square table living room with all the art jewelry in it. Right?
Nice.
So, but the thing about the etching and the art jewelry is their hand.
Yep.
It's very personal. Whereas like a poster, a photograph, I mean, it's decoration, but it's not.
That's right.
It's not the hand of man, it's the hand of machine, right?
Yes.
So I really enjoyed that stuff. But now I'm thinking about it is you asked me what I should be doing with the vacation I should send myself on, which was go see the fall leaves, which I'm thinking about yesterday. I better go do it. Is that's probably what the vacation I should send myself on for a bit of a treat there. So I'll just do a gallery run.
And see,
Yeah, you're a very smart man. Thank you.
I don't know. I just try to kick open doors and show you that they're not locked, and then you figure out which ones you want to choose because it's like you know what to do. I don't know what to do. I just create openings.
All right,
You're
so
doing good. I appreciate you you just gave the audience a little extra few minutes of discourse on art, and that was wonderful. And now we have to get coffee because I've exhausted mine.
I wanted to be happy.
Yeah.
I would
Oh
do
my.
sex, relationships, fashion, and art.
Right?
Right? If I wanted to be a happy person, that's what I would do. But
Right.
I got this fucking big social problem I'm in the middle of.
Noblesse oblige.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to pause this and we're going to come back in a few minutes after I get a fresh cup of coffee.
Thank you.
I was just saying to Brad that thanks partly to him, that my health is improving and I don't quite look so aged as I was looking, which is kind of comforting. So I'm hanging out. Oh, here's I get insulted.
Oh my.
I'm hanging out with a buddy of mine, right, who's my age, right? And so we're going over our past wives, and I'm like, I love them all, and it's like I have all of my female history on my phone because I love them, right? So every once in a while, I just go through memory lane of my relationships. It always makes me happy, right? I guess for some people it's their kids. For me, it's my relationships, right? I just love these women, right? So I just go through them. And so I've showed this picture, and I said, "Oh yeah, here's one of my favorites." And I showed it to him, and he says, "And I guess you were a good-looking guy." I'm like, "What? I'm not anymore. I mean,
Right.
what the fuck? He's a dick." That's what friends are for, right? Is digs.
That's it.
I was supposed to go on a big dinner last night, but the guy who usually cooks got sick, so didn't go on that. So I don't have any stories. Usually I come back with conservative stories. What does Todd run? Todd runs what conservative news sites does he run? Let's see if I can find it really quickly. CD Media.
Okay.
If you Creative Destruction Media, he runs all this stuff, and he has reporters and all this other stuff. And he did some intel work, so he's fun to work with. He did, he's like he's a reporter type. Man, that guy is a lot of fun. But we have a gathering down there. I'm an invitee. I don't have anything to do with organizing it. And we always come back with some bunch of goddamn stories.
Right.
So, but I have a problem. I put a housekeeping scale out today. You didn't see my housekeeping scale?
No, I don't know what it is.
So it goes from Architectural Digest to Better Homes and Gardens to Susie Homemaker
Okay.
to Working Parents Household to 3 Kids Saturday to Single Mom Overload
Oh my.
to I've Been Busy to Bachelor Pad
Oh my.
to Frat After Party to Alcoholic Binger to Crack House and
Oh my.
That's my home housekeeping scale.
And while I'm usually in the, I've been busy.
Right.
I've descended from bachelor pad that I'm in danger of going to frat after party.
Oh my.
Well, I really gotta,
It's not,
I gotta,
the beauty of your backdrop is nobody can tell.
nobody, yeah. But it's like, okay, there's a pile of clothes there. There's the laundry out to go to the laundry. There's that bunch of dishes that needs to scrubbing. Those things that get put away. The floor's got to be swept. My shoes are out. Got a couple of plastic bottles around here, water that need to be thrown in the trash. I don't know. My world, I get productive in writing, and then my household falls apart.
I
You
understand.
can't win. But I mean,
Sure.
I don't know if what you think of that scale, but that's a pretty good
scale.
That's a pretty good scale. I just don't want to get to frat after party.
Because things, the potentials just become
It just
disastrous.
because it's an accelerating curve.
That's right. It's
Right,
like,
right. The minute you get to frat house, you're
you're on the edge, buddy.
you're on the edge of alcoholic bender, and you're not far from crack house.
It's just this far.
It's not really that bad, but
Yes.
it's a good system. See, this is called serialization by disambiguation and operationalization into a system of measurement. And see what happens if you do this long enough? You start rating your housekeeping scales.
It's very impressive.
All right. Are we supposed to do real work today?
By whom?
Where are you? So this morning, I was talking to you earlier in the week that it's taking me a lot of thinking to get this introduction part going, but I'm actually feeling really good about it.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to review it and tell you what I'm thinking and see if my pitch
Yeah.
to you carries water.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So can I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Share my desktop? Hopefully what you see is our
Yeah.
introduction here.
Yeah. Introduction.
And you see Yali's question.
Yes.
Right? So I have what this book is about, right? And I have this story all filled out in the Word document, so I just haven't transferred it over.
Right.
And I talk about the crisis of our age, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the problem statement? Then we go to Yali's question, which is, so what went wrong? My view is that we need, after this, we need the risk. In other words, the perils of inaction.
Yes.
All right. So was what I came up with this morning. And then we have what is to be done. And the next great endeavor, right?
Yes.
And the program contents. Right. And then we have, so what's our mission as we walk through this? Then we go into part 2, which is, okay, how to read the book. What is it? Oh, crap. So you really have the story, the narrative here, right?
Yeah.
And then our journey, and basically prep work.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yes.
What are you thinking?
I think so. Now, prep work is just, just primer.
Right, now these aren't, like, this is all written. I don't,
Right.
right, this is these two. So these aren't chapters, right? They're sub chapters.
Yes.
So they're not, this might look like a lot of stuff, but it's not. The thing that's a lot of stuff is this one.
Okay.
So I don't know why that's so bold. What I want is, see how this is 3 and that's 4. Doesn't it seem like this should not be bold? I don't know why that's doing that. Okay. See, I want it to look more like this. Anyway, so we go from this, and this is so what went wrong, right? What we have to know that is that we have to know what went right to know what went wrong.
Right.
Then I'm going to put this in the historical revolutions, which we covered verbally in the beginning of the last, right? I have to put this together, plus I have to talk about these, I have to do all these historical
Right.
models to show people that what's going on. And then I want to get down into individual topics, like what went wrong in philosophy, right? What went wrong in history, the academy, the court, the constitution, right? And then the next section is getting rid of the problem of blame, which I'm waiting for you to acknowledge that this is important. All right. So we deal with the problem of blame. In other words, how hard it is to make it, right? And then, and then the failure of the new magical thinking, and then blame. This should be up higher, right? So I think the narrative that I basically covered here with you in the early part of it, which is the historical narrative, and then I basically talk about each discipline failing it.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
yeah, that does make sense.
Right. And then there's a conclusion, right? Cycles of history, and where we are in the cycles of history, and therefore. So what I've tried to do is state the problem, and then we go into, okay, now what's the risks of inaction, and then what's not to be done. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
Right. I think if we do that, and my whole thing was, can we say the truth with enough context that, and close with this, right? Close with the problem of blame, that we forego initial criticisms.
Yes.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that's how it works. That it takes the sting out of the potential barbers.
Because we're not saying, right? We're saying it's just natural. So my thing is, this is going to turn into a bunch of subsections.
Right.
Be too long, but that's it. And then I'm going to add that. Honestly, that's what I wanted to run by you. And that's really it, right? I know I can do it off the top of my head, right? I mean,
Right.
I know all the content for all these sections. I think this is going to be the work right here. This is going to be the work, right? The Ollie's question: what went wrong? What went right? Historical context. What went wrong? The summary with the cycles of history, and then so that you pose the question. This is what is pose the big question.
The risks of inaction.
Right.
I think there has to be something about just delay, right? Risks of delay. time sensitivity.
So, do the series.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Because one of the things that I see is we're overcoming the near left, the desire for them to coffee clutch about it into the wee hours of the morning.
What'd you call it?
Yeah.
Coffee?
Coffee clutch. We're trying to KLATCH. This is German. So it's like we're trying to cause them to become aware of it. Does that make sense? Because they're going to want to have a chat about it. And it's like, yeah, you want to make sure that they understand that you regard that as near talking to the fundamentalists.
I need to hear you say that again.
You want to make it understood that talking to the philosophers is near akin to talking to the fundamentalists, which is a wasting time that is not available for such investment.
So therefore, we have to.
We have work to do here, and we don't have time to
Who's you? Is that what you mean? Talk to you?
the reader.
Yeah, but if we're not talking to philosophers, who?
No, we're not going to engage in idle banter. There's got to be yeah, there is. It's Tolkien and the trolls, right? The mountain trolls, I think they are stone trolls or something.
Mhm.
Because you talk to them until the sun comes up and they turn to stone because they've been delayed so long by talking to the Hobbit.
Yep.
And so that's what we wish to avoid. And it's like we're not going to be lulled into a trap here by chattering with the chatterboxes.
All right. So you want me to? Brad wants me to.
You're just laying groundwork, right?
Yes.
So
Okay.
that it-
Yeah.
so
What
that
I'm
there-
what I'm trying to do is make enough of the argument.
yeah.
I mean, it's an introduction. I'm trying to explain enough context for the argument because the rest of the book is a fucking proof.
Yes.
I mean, that's really it. But I don't want to. I don't. We've tried every.
I look at this as the essential parts of the discourse.
Right.
And it's like it stands by itself, and the rest of the book is proof that is like a giant appendix that's
Correct.
digests all the information for you.
But I want to deal with the blame issue because that's really
Yes. Because see, you're dealing with the center. The center is the only part that is the moving part.
right because the center is. Let's actually make that argument.
Right. So the center is going to be interested in hearing the discourse coming from the center lefties who specialize in philosophical discourse and dialectics and neologisms and just stop. Right. So we want to cause them to have some reservation about engaging in these processes when they're reading this, because Just read it.
Mhm. I believe, thanks to your torturous water on the rock alteration of my
Yeah.
rage, I can do this without too much difficulty, and I'll probably, what'll be weird is it'll cook and then I'll write it all in one day.
Yeah.
And then we add the risk.
You had it in that Yali's question part, I think.
Yeah, I just want to make it over here. Why are you taking so long?
I know. Let's think about this for a minute.
See, I love this little bit at the bottom here.
Yes.
This creates a Q&A section.
Hmm.
If I just fill it in, I don't have to do anything. I love this. I wrote the authors like, oh yeah, it does that.
Hmm.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Very interesting. Yeah, I like that great filter. That is a problem.
No, it's fucking scary. Oh hell. The navigation in this piece of software is not what I want it to be, but I can get around it, but it's just like, where, how the hell did I get there? Acknowledgements, introduction, what's what I'm looking for? I'm looking for, where is risks? I don't see you.
Look under Yali's question. Yeah, it should be in there.
It should be in here. Let me just read.
Look under Yali question. I thought you put it under there.
No, that's hold on. Yeah, so that's gone now. Oh, fuck you. Let's go play it the dirty way. I don't need another one open. Thank you very much. Watch it be at the end or something. Yep.
How about them apples?
Introduction, order 4, update. Go back here.
Boom. There it is.
Where?
It's under the great and our next great endeavor.
We want it up here, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Why? I'm gonna do it this way. Yep.
That worked,
Boom.
apparently.
Boom. Well, a little magic to be done under there.
Yes.
I think I really like this, Brad.
It is. I'm looking forward to reading it.
Well, I mean,
Because there is, I know what it's going to say, but I think it will be crafty. I will enjoy it as art.
yeah, it's also one of those things that you massage.
Yes.
You write it once and then you keep going after it. So let me just think about this a second. Behavioral laws of nature. That's gonna make me tired. That's
Hmm.
me really fucking tired. This is fun. Boy, we're gonna get in trouble down here.
The big trouble section.
Oh my God, I didn't start copying this over. Did I move it over? I did. I think I did. No, I thought I moved it over. No, I think is it here? Yes. Look at all these.
Oh my.
I don't know why I put it there instead of there. Supposed to be there. We'll have to change this title because it's what went wrong with our laws,
Ah,
our forms. It's either that or what we did up here with what went wrong. No, that's the outline. And then what went wrong is the disciplines. Okay. So we go through the disciplines and how to correct them. I've already written that. That's easy. Then the Constitution's all done, right? I mean, that's all written.
yeah.
Prosecution, I have to convince Brad to put in.
Okay.
And the summary there. And then the back matter is just the usual
Yes.
crap. Okay. So dude, I don't know.
I do. It's excellent.
I think I think it's fucking awesome. I think I'm gonna just write this fresh
Yes. I like that.
rather than trying to move it over.
No, because it's like, I think that will come out better anyway.
Yeah, I'm just write this
Because
fresh.
then you'll have a certain flow that won't otherwise be there.
Right. I can just read the previous and then just retell it because this is just
That's right. It's reference material.
all right. So okay, well, that's what I wanted to know. Have I got the basic? And I can clearly do it. If you read the first drafts I have of this,
I limit the amount of drafts I read. I have a hard enough time keeping up with you at all. To forensically go over how you got here is just like hell on wheels.
But the book, right? The last real full draft I did in Word, right? It's actually, I mean, the narrative is what we've got here is perfect, right? I'm really proud of what we've got.
Good.
This was more like organized as a work of philosophy, as a work of philosophy. It wasn't as action oriented. And so I start out with what are we going to introduce? And it's more from the middle outward. Yeah, this is so much better. It's just so much fucking better. Really, it's just fuck. So much better. All right. I'm really happy. I need some amphetamines.
Oh my.
I was kidding for the audience. That's an ode to Hunter Thompson.
That's right.
And on one end, and Philip K. Dick on the other. I don't know if you know Philip K. Dick is a science fiction. He wrote a lot of the science fiction movies we see are based on Philip K. Dick stories, like Blade Runner is, and so, so we've had they've been mining Philip K. Dick to make science fiction movies for since forever ago. But he's notorious for coffee and amphetamines. I'm waiting for you to say something.
I am not going to say anything on public comment on this subject.
Oh, come on. I left it open for you to beat me up.
I'm not beating anybody up.
You're not beating
I'm just holding my tongue until we stop recording.
Geez, some of the softballs I hand you,
I know.
and you just.
I like Luke. I'm not going to swing at that
You're
one.
not taking the bait. You know. I feel really happy right now.
Good.
I have never felt this good about the work before, because it's what I wanted it to be.
That's what I want to hear.
It is absolutely wonderful. And if I can maintain this level of energy, we're going to be in really good condition. We're getting it out.
Yep.
The audience can't tell because we're showing this outline, right? But there's like all this content that's on these other.
That's right.
Here.
There's an ocean of content.
It's just got to go into it. The thing is that it turns out it's actually easier to rewrite. The part on logic, no, but because that's so anal retentive. I'm extremely proud of it. But a lot of it I should probably write in the current voice.
Right.
Just easier than editing, because when I find out I work too hard at editing and it's still not what I want. So I'll just rewrite it. That's what you should do anyway. Kinds of voice. Okay. I'm done.
Very good. Well, everybody, know what? Do what you're supposed to do. Hit that button, and that button. Leave all the comments. Do tell us what you think about art. Whatever you think about whatever else we talked about. And whatever else you might want us to talk about in the future.
Can I talk about art for a second?
Of course.
You actually can't have a conversation about art anymore.
Why?
Because it's like you think they've destroyed our history.
Oh my.
But they've destroyed our art history, our knowledge of art. And there's a really tight relationship between European art, European literature, philosophy, religion.
and our law and culture. And they've intentionally destroyed it. And I'm like, if you don't understand, it's as important to understand our art, because art was the comic book that was used by the church and whatever to illustrate.
Right.
Right. But it was also the comic book used by the aristocracy to illustrate. I mean, you have both the
Right. It's the iconic representation of story.
If you don't understand that, it kills the majesty. It's like when you talk about architecture, somebody said this the other day. When you talk about great architecture, it's the study of churches in Europe. That's what it is. So there's nothing else to talk about. And when you get to the great the Gothic, I mean, that's the one purely European style. Is Gothic, is German. Nothing, everything else is an influence, but Gothic is purely us. It's like Gothic
Yep.
In German language. So it's almost impossible. Like if I went to a gallery or a museum,
Yep.
I bet you I couldn't find a peer.
Very unlikely.
I couldn't find a peer to talk about art with.
No, I think that's
And my generation, I think we were the last to get a formal education in high art. High art meaning art proper. And you could still get it. You could still get a graduate degree at like Yale. But I'm not sure that you can get the synthesis of art, philosophy, literature, law, and economy. I don't think you can get that. It's all been fragmented, so you can't get it.
Huh.
And I still wonder if my education in high art, of course, I studied history first, right? Encyclopedias and history, and mostly military, right? Because it's a gadget history. History of Western military is a history of gadgets. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't think of it that way, but they're really, stirrups.
Hey, wow. How about that?
Bronze and shit like that. I mean, it's a history of gadgets and catapults and machines and muskets and armor. It's a history of gadgets. So, I mean, if you look at that as a technological history, that's how I took it.
Yep.
But then you look at art history, and you're like, wow, there was amazing shit going on. And comparative art history does something different. Whereas comparative military history it creates this weird sense of equality.
Yes.
Art history doesn't create a sense of equality. It's a very different. It's a visual representation of metaphysical differences between cultures. And you can see, like I would say, the Chinese are the Chinese because they hate the human being. They hate humans. They hate the human form. They hate the human being. They only love the child because they hate the human, right? They just hate it. Where the Greeks, the opposite, right? And then the Middle East, they hate the world. Something really beautiful about Hinduism, and Hinduism is kind of magical. It's kind of crazy. I don't get it. I love it.
Still working on that one. Work in progress.
Just cannot get that.
He's in the clouds. If you can't tell by the way he's gesticulating.
It's just how the fuck. I mean, I can't afford to study it right now, but there's Germany and India. I just want to understand. I mean, everybody else makes sense to me. I gotta really get Germany down, and India. I mean, I'm not sure they know.
I know they would not admit to such ignorance, but they will.
I don't know. Some of them say that.
Really?
It's complicated. But they're just, and then Buddhism, you can't criticize Buddhism. I mean, you could criticize the consequences of it, like the insularism, the self. But I mean,
navel gazing.
But it's not action oriented. But they even argue with that, and I'm like, you're wrong. But I mean, it's okay, right? It's okay. Arianism is action oriented, but I mean, not everybody can do it.
right? So Stoicism is action oriented. Most people can do it. Christianity is action oriented, believe it or not, although the scripturalists would like to tell you otherwise. It's about doing act of charity. So, but realistically, we can all do it because it just means good fucking manners and forgiving people, right? I mean, so, you know, so I mean, I don't, but that Hindu shit is just like, what the fuck is going on here, and why does that work? I mean, it's like, it's an n-dimensional problem, right? There's so many
too many moving bodies,
There's
right?
so many moving parts. I'm like, I know there's a pattern here because it's producing one, but I can't fucking figure it out for the life of me. You know? I can disambiguate everything else on earth except into religion.
About that.
That's an interesting insight right there.
A
But,
mystery
the problem with art
mystery.
is they've torn away our art is part of our culture, and it's a culture of excellence.
Yeah.
And it's the presumption of the status of man is quite different in West, right? I mean, we have heroes that try to become gods, and they often succeed, at least partly. And we have gods that think they're heroes, and they're just dysfunctional families like the rest of us. And I just think that's fucking glorious. And order and disorder is far better than good and evil. Right?
There you go. That's a good way to leave this.
All right. Love you, brother. Thank you for today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Like, subscribe, bell, comment. Tell me thoughts on book, please, because
And art.
and art, whatever. All right, guys.
All right.
Signing off.
Just stop the recording.
Oh, okay.